Macron came to power as a centrist candidate, and all he has done is leaning further and further to the right and leading us in the situation where now we do have a rise of the far right, because of course they didn't come first, but they increased their number of MPs, which of course should be increasingly worrying for us all.
France has chosen to go left, kind of, but not French people who live here in the UK and other parts of Northern Europe outside France. There's a special constituency for them, rather brilliantly. And they have voted, as everyone has done in France, and they've actually ended up narrowly backing President Macron's centrist party over the left-wing New Popular Front. Let's talk to Charlotte Minvielle, who represented the left in the seat but lost by less than 1,000 votes. Morning to you, Charlotte.
Good morning.
How are you feeling? Is it one that you're feeling sad that your party didn't win, but happy that your party's done pretty well and the National Rally seemed to have done badly?
Exactly. That's exactly my feeling. Of course, I'm disappointed that we lost by 808 votes, but it's a huge progress for the left on our constituency of French people living in Northern Europe. So I think in that sense, it's a bit of a victory. And I'm also, of course, very much relieved that the far right hasn't come ahead in our parliament, and that our alliance of the left, made in record time, of progressive values, of social justice and environmental justice, has come first, and that now we have a chance to be in government and forming of government.
Well, how are you going to do that? I mean, are you willing to prop up a candidate that Macron can work with? And because some of your policies are very much in opposition to his policies.
Totally. I think our programs are very much in opposition, whether that be raising minimum wage, going back on the immigration bill that was very much inhumane, or looking at the pensions bill, etc. There are a lot of things that we're truly in opposition against. And I think the fact that we came in the lead means that it's going to be for them to consider on their side whether they're willing to be able to support policies that are more to the left, which is not what they have done for the past 7 years that they've been in government. Macron came to power as a centrist candidate, and all he has done is leaning further and further to the right and leading us in the situation where now we do have a rise of the far right, because of course they didn't come first, but they increased their number of MPs, which of course should be increasingly worrying for us all.
But Macron, who is a relatively proud man, he's not a humble man by anyone's standards.
No.
He's got a whole bunch of policies that you disagree with. He's not going to back down on them. So what happens if you can't form a coalition? His party can't form a coalition. The right, the hard right, can't form a coalition. What happens next? Are you worried that there might be, this is kind of you're in constitutionally difficult territory here?
Of course. And I think, we have been responsible on the left by forming our alliance in a record time. Emmanuel Macron gave us 3 weeks. I think now it's for them to be responsible and to think about, are they willing to block the country or to move further towards the left and adopt some of our policies? But I think you're raising a good question in terms of our institutions. We are not a parliament. We don't have a parliamentary system. We have very much a presidential system. We don't have proportional representation. And I think a lot of that needs to be revised and thought through, because of course it puts us in situations like these which are difficult to sustain.
Do you think it would take Macron to say something like, I will go back on my desire to increase the pension age to 64, wasn't it? And will he have to do something like, he'll have to lose a flagship policy if he wants to get support?
And I think that would not be sufficient. One of
Really?
our key policies is raising the minimum wage at 1,600 euros per month for people, and who are, inequalities have really been on the rise. Food banks have been in greater, there's been more people accessing food banks. There's been, really difficult situations in terms of our public services, our hospitals, our schools. So I think, that alone would, of course, not be sufficient. And as I mentioned, his immigration bill has also been a big shift to the far right, which wouldn't be acceptable for us to not go back on. So there's a lot of things that they would have to rethink and that they would have to reconsider, and seeing how they could be able to lean towards our values. Because let's not forget, there were people who were protesting last night, Place de la République in Paris, and in all cities in France, huge amounts of joy and hope in the program of the Nouveau Front Populaire, of course, encountering the far right, which was a huge fear for everybody. But also our program has brought a lot of hope, and our voters have expectations in terms of the changes that we can make for society. So now we have a big duty to not disappoint them.
Just finally, before you go, it's a very strange idea. You have a constituency of people not living in France, having an MP to represent them in France. How does that work in practice? Is it a good idea, do you think? We don't have the equivalent in this country.
No, you don't. But I think it's credit to France in terms of really caring about its citizens abroad. And actually, we've seen that the participation in our for this election has really very much increased. And French people in Northern Europe and all of the constituencies of French people living abroad have been hugely mobilized. And there's a lot of things in terms of issues of French people living abroad, like access to education or French culture, but also in terms of post Brexit, look at what could be the agreements that could be done to facilitate mobility between French people living in Northern Europe, etc. There's a lot of topics like that that need to be thought through, including environmentally friendly developing transportation between Northern Europe and France, including trains, etc., that are more affordable for people. So there's a lot of issues that we can actually hold in Parliament.
Well, it's a really interesting idea. Charlotte, great to speak to you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. That's Charlotte Minvielle, who's from the new Popular Front. Imagine if there was an expat MP or 5 expat MPs in the House of Commons. That'd be quite the thought.
I was disappointed you didn't end that interview by saying au revoir.
I know.
Or something.
Do you know what I was frightened of? I nearly said bonjour to begin with, and then I thought,
Oh, bless
what if
you.
she thinks I'm better at French than I am?